So it looks like Canon has a very big week ahead, and the story is going to stretch from a 20-year legacy to some very current leaks and teasers that will matter for you if you shoot video or stills. We've got a new cinema camera, a replacement for the very popular R6 and R7, and more. So let's jump in. So it's officially been 20 years since Canon launched the EOS 5D on August 22nd, 2005. The first truly economical full-frame digital camera that personally I think kind of changed the game. The original 5D launched with an MSRP of $32.99. And while that was a huge jump from the 20D's $14.99 price, it was the first full-frame image quality that was attainable for a broader group of photographers. It was a genuine moment and a genuine leap from the APS-C bodies that we had at the time, finally bringing the shallow depth of field and fast lens look into the digital era without the budget of a medium format camera. Now, the original 5D did come with some trade-offs. The viewfinder blackout was long, the frame rates were slow, and users definitely had to watch out for their exposures with the potential for clipping. But once you learned it, the files were a pleasure to work with. It is fun to look back and think about some of the things that we were worried about then, as whether or not the 12.8 megapixel sensor would actually stress the resolving power and stability of the lenses that we had at the time. Back then, 8 megapixels was more than enough, which is funny considering the fact that nowadays 24 megapixels might not be enough. Now, reviews for the camera were generally positive, but some question whether or not the 5D made sense against popular 20 and 30D models in the APS-C side. In hindsight, it's clear that the 5D series became one of Canon's most popular and successful lines, as is the direct descendant to the EOS R5 Mark II. So if you're feeling nostalgic, or maybe you just picked up a used 5D, I've got a link to the old manual down in the description if you want to take a look at that. But 2 decades on, the 5D still marks a turning point. If you shot with one, you definitely remember it. And if you haven't, you probably benefited from the path that it has paved. Next, let's talk about some unusual patent direction that we're seeing out of Canon when it comes to R&D on some of their lenses. So Canon has a curious patent application that doesn't look like a typical mirrorless zoom that we've been seeing out of them recently, and the clue is in the image height. So image height often signals a lens's intended format and use case. So from existing published designs, lenses in question appear to target larger image circles than standard mirrorless glass, which points to the potential for cinema applications rather than compact mirrorless zooms. But beyond the patent itself, the discussion branches into a real-world discussion about telephoto and extender performance, which is useful context when you think about Canon's long lens design choices. And what this patent indicates is that there is the potential that Canon is going to be using some of its EF glass designs, especially those that come out with some of the best resolving power, that they may be moving more of those into potentially a new line of cinema lenses. There are quite a few cinema bodies out there that use EF glass, and I wonder if Canon intends on continuing to support that. But next, let's pivot over to third-party glass, because there's actually a lot happening there. Now, according to the photoblogger Viltrox, which is a company that has been launching quite a few lenses recently, some of them on the RF mount, some on the EF mount, and they've launched their brightest 56mm yet, an f1.2 with autofocus, for under $600. The new 56mm f1.2 AF Pro is listed at $580 and is described as being designed for full-frame cameras like the Nikon Z and the Sony E. But of course, it'll also work on APS-C bodies like the Fujifilm XF. No mention yet about an RF mount or RFS compatibility, but Viltrox again is one of the brands that Canon has mentioned as a potential for getting access to the RF mount on the third-party side. Now, this lens packs 13 elements in 8 groups, with 1 ED element and 1 ultra-large precision aspherical element. Now, along with their advanced HD nano coating, this design looks super modern and capable. Controls include a focus lock button, click switch, auto and manual focus switch, as well as focus and aperture rings. There's an XF variant that omits the click switch. Now the autofocus here is powered by their Hyper VCM motor with a 0.5 meter minimum focusing distance and 0.13x max magnification. It's got internal focus, a 67mm filter thread, and it claims to be dust and drip resistant. Now weight can vary by mount, but you're looking at somewhere between 570 and 600 grams. Now, Viltrox has had recent success with their autofocus 50 Air, which is an f2 lens, and their 85 1.4. That indicates that this lens should be a strong choice for portrait, street, event, and wedding work. But an additional note to make on Viltrox as we talk about them potentially being able to offer RF glass, they have joined the L-Mount Alliance. And they've dropped this lens as well as their 15mm f1.7 Air, which is an APS-C lens, on that system. Now this lens, the 5612, is being presented on the L mount as an APS-C prime that's delivering an 85mm full-frame equivalent field of view on E and XF mounts. Additionally, this lens does have a USB firmware port, which is a super cool thing to see on more and more lenses, as well as impressive MTF charting with high contrast across the frame and very low aberrations. So if you like fast primes on a budget in this particular focal range, this might be the sweet spot for portraits and low light. And if you're looking for something a lot wider, that 15mm f1.7 Air looks like an affordable travel lens. Now let's move on to the big stories of this week, which are Canon bodies, and we're going to start talking about APS-C. So we talked about the R7 Mark II quite a few times here on the channel. There have been quite a few rumors and leaks about this particular camera. It is going to be extremely popular when it comes out, and now we're hearing that it will be coming relatively soon with prototype models out in the field. What makes this story a little bit different is that we now have a sighting, which kind of confirms some of the rumors that we had already seen, which was that it would be getting a bigger body, more equivalent to something like the R5 Mark II, a larger EVF, and a joystick moved into the more conventional position that we find on other Canon cameras. The rear LCD also appears to have up and down flippy capability rather than just being able to flip out to the side. That's new for Canon, but consistent both with this sighting and the rumors, and with the rumors that we've been getting about the R6 Mark III, but we'll talk about that in a second. Now, the information that we have on this sighting indicates that this is going to be an APS-C camera with an APS-C lens attached. Although, of course, this camera would be able to take full frame just with that 1.6 crop. Also indicated in the sighting was that we would not be getting a top-down LCD a la the R5 series. But the timing remains relatively fuzzy. We've been hearing all sorts of things about an event next week, which we'll talk a little bit more about later in the video. So I don't think we're going to be seeing the R7 Mark II at that event, but we continue to hear that the R7 Mark II would be released alongside the R6 Mark III in a larger dual event, potentially later this year or early next. Also, we're anticipating potential changes to the shutter mechanism to improve rolling shutter performance and shutter shock that some R7 users experienced with action shooting. So if you're an R7 user or owner, what's the one thing that you want them to absolutely improve on the R7? Is it the rolling shutter? Is it ergonomics? Is it autofocus? Do you just want some more resolution? What are you looking for there? But we do have one more Canon camera body to talk about before we get to our cinema teaser, and that's the R6 Mark III. Now, you know that I love the R6 series. I had the 6D Mark II, I had the R6, I have the R6 Mark II. I'm shooting on it right now. It's one of my favorite cameras. And we continue to see additional information about the R6 Mark III. Now, I've heard both that it would be released imminently, like within the next week or so, but I've also heard that it might be released alongside the R7 Mark II in a combo event later this year or early next year. What I can't really figure out is whether or not the teaser is confusing some people about whether or not we're going to get a release within the coming days for the R6 Mark III, or if this is just the cinema camera that we're talking about. Because the other date that we're actually hearing is September 15th for the R6 Mark III, which would be about a week after the cinema announcement is expected. What we've known is that there have been versions of the R6 Mark III out in the wild with various resolutions from 24 up to 32, and in some cases those sensors were stacked sensors. What we're hearing now, and the most common rumors seem to be converging around the idea of about a 30 to 31 megapixel sensor, an increase from the 24 megapixels that we see in the R6 Mark II, but not a stacked sensor. That was something that we had heard earlier this year, and it was one of the prototypes that was bouncing around. At one point, we'd actually heard that the 24 megapixel sensor in the R3 was actually being used in some of those prototypes. That may have been a potential direction that Canon was going, and it may have just been something for them to use as a prototype to test other features and hardware in that camera. That may have potentially contributed to the rumor about it being a stacked sensor. And while stacked sensors offer faster readout, reduced rolling shutter, faster AF calculations, there is a slight trade-off in measurable dynamic range and an increase in noise. And the R6 line is really kind of known for low noise and high dynamic range. And increasing to 30 megapixels or 31 or 32 megapixels would potentially add more noise and reduce that dynamic range while increasing the need for circuitry to pull all of those pixels at the same time. And staying consistent with the R6's role and price point, a well-optimized, non-stacked sensor paired with the advanced compute that we get out of newer Canon processors, I think is going to be better for them, especially if they're looking to continue hitting that medium range price point. I think the potential for putting higher end AF in this camera and a stacked sensor, especially a new stacked sensor, would have been too expensive to be able to hit the price points when you take into account the increase in prices that they've had to levy on a lot of their products over the last few months. But doing those things without a stacked sensor, I still think that we can see a quick enough practical electronic shutter to keep things relatively standard. Additionally, we're hearing no top LCD, which is fine. That's not really something that we've come to expect from the R6 line, but a new flexible screen, potentially the one that we just talked about for the R7 Mark II. I've also heard potentially that it may be OLED, which would be great for bright outdoor environments. Also hearing about RAW pre-capture, improved autofocus, and while the rumor indicated 20 to 30 FPS bursts, I think I forgot that this current camera, this is not that camera. This is the R5. The camera that I'm shooting on right now is the R6 Mark II. That camera can shoot 40 frames per second. So 20 to 30 would be a drop. I think they should just keep it at 40, just give a slightly better readout, improved dynamic range, improved rolling shutter performance, give us 4K 120, even if it's partially cropped, keep the oversampled 4K 60, because honestly, if this camera doesn't have the same sharpness and quality in its 4K that we currently get out of the 4K in the R6 Mark II, then it's DOA. But if they can also give us C-Log 2 as well as C-Log 3, maybe a fast burst mode to utilize the new P variant battery, that would be great. We've also heard that there were versions rolling around that had one SD and one CF Express and one that had dual SD cards. Again, right now we just don't know for sure. But a lot of these rumors hold, or at least have held over the last few months, and are now lining up with what we've heard about the R7. So what I'm kind of expecting is an R6 with these iterative improvements, and then an R7 in almost an identical body, but just with an APS-C sensor and maybe slightly faster. But if the expected announcement window holds, we won't have too long to wait. But that brings us to Canon's September 9th event. And that's where we're expecting the cinema story to be front and center. And according to Canon rumors, Canon will be announcing a new cinema EOS camera on September 9th, which they're calling the C50. We've heard for a while that there was a video-centric APS-C camera in the pipeline, or at least something at the lower end of the price point to replace the R5C. Now, the reporting also indicates that the C50 might be based on the hardware of the R5 Mark II, but tailored more for filmmakers, positioning it as directly going in against the Sony FX line, specifically the FX3. But we've also been hearing that Canon is targeting the FX30 with an APS-C cinema body. What we don't know is which one we're potentially getting next week. Now, they have this big event scheduled on the 9th before IBC, and they reportedly flew in a number of folks to show the camera off out in Burbank. Now, the image that we have from the teaser indicates a red tally light, a red button grip, right? It's clearly a video and cinema focused body, plus a flat top with no viewfinder, and control arrangements that are reminiscent of cinema EOS cameras. It honestly almost looks like the R50V, but bigger. And in the spring, I reported on the fact that there was a rumor out there about there being potentially another V-series camera that was actually going to be based on the R7. Now, I don't think that Canon needs a video version or a cinema version of every single camera that it owns. That is kind of the Sony way of doing things. And it's not a bad way of doing things, it's not really Canon's way. And to be quite honest, as a Canon user, when I look at Sony's lineup, I get confused. But I'm a Canon user, so I'm not very smart. What I would love to see, honestly, is an R8/R6, right? Give us 24 megapixels, improve the low light performance, give us 6K, give us open gate, give us all the cinema features, video features, give us C-Log 2, and put it in a body that is more akin to a cinema style body, but just don't make it $4,000. That's what I'm looking for as a creator, and I think that would be a popular sweet spot, and I think it's why the R6 Mark III is something people are really looking forward to, and why the R6 Mark II has been so popular both for stills and video shooters. So whether it's APS-C or full frame, folks seem to be leaning more towards the full frame side of things, with the C50 replacing the R5C with R5 Mark II class hardware, but in a compact body. But that kind of worries me, because then it sounds like a $4,500 price point. I'll be watching the premiere, maybe I'll even do a live on the channel while it's going, and I'll have a breakdown once the specs are official. But that's it for the Canon news this week. There's a lot going on in the next couple of weeks. If you want to support what I'm doing here, consider becoming a channel member. It's $1. And if you're looking to book a photo or video session, all the details are down below, including links to some of the gear that I talked about in this video, along with my gear lists. Now, using those links do help the channel, but as always, the easiest way to support the channel and what I'm doing here is to hit like and subscribe. Those are always free, and they go a long way to helping me grow here on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.